The first international race series in history was initiated by James Gordon Bennett Jr., millionaire owner of the New York Herald. In 1899, Gordon Bennett offered a trophy to the Automobile Club de France, to be raced for annually by the automobile clubs in the various European countries. The conditions for entering demanded that every part of a competing vehicle had to be produced in the country that it represented, including the wheels. The first race, in 1900, was held from Paris to Lyon, and won by the Frenchman Fernand Charron, driving a Panhard Levasseur. The Vanderbilt Cup was an international race event, open to all countries across the world. The announcement of the race, however, was riddled with politics and legal issues, with people trying to prevent it from happening, but Vanderbilt prevailed, and the Vanderbilt Cup became the first definitive trophy in American auto racing history. The races were held on Long Island, and the early ones, from 1904 to 1910, were some of the most exciting races of the time. The Vanderbilt Cup also saw the rise to glory of some of the earliest successful racing cars, like the Locomobile and the Lozier. One of the oldest endurance road racing events, the Targa Florio, was founded in 1906 by Italian race driver Vincenzo Florio. The race was held around a 72-kilometer circuit, the Circuito Piccolo del Madini, around the Italian mountains surrounding the city of Sicily. The first Targa Florio covered 3 laps, through treacherous tracks and mountainous curves, at heights that witness frequently changing and difficult climate. Alessandro Cagno won the inaugural race in 1906. The race as an international event saw the last rays of the sun in 1973, when it was won by a Porsche 911 prototype. It continued till 1977 as a national event, when a fatal crash resulted in it being stopped. The idea for most famous of all vintage car races came from a challenge published in the Paris newspaper. What needs to be proved today is that as long as a man has a car, he can do anything and go anywhere. The race, that was to span over 2 continents and a distance of 15,000 kilometers, was, simply put, unimaginable in a time when people still doubted automobiles to be a replacement for horse-drawn carriages. There were 40 entries, however, out of which only 5 were enthusiastic enough to ship their cars to Peking. The race followed a telegraph route, and each car had 1 journalist as a passenger, who would be able to cover the race from each car. The remote areas of Asia, that had never seen motor travel before, proved to be a grueling inhibition. The crews met with a variety of challenges and difficulties. The Atala, for example, fell through a wooden bridge. In the end, after months of swashbuckling heroics, the cars lumbered into Paris with Borghese's Atala, who was crowned the winner. If the Peking-Paris race of the 1907 proved that cars had come to stay, the New York-Paris was meant to deal a final death blow to all skeptics of the automobile. It was from Times Square, on a frigid February morning, that the 6 cars from 4 different countries took off for the first round-the-world auto contest. Eventually, after a grueling drive across 3 continents, the roads of Europe were a welcome sight. The winner, a U.S. Thomas Flyer, reached Paris on the 30th of July, 4 days behind the German protos. The Germans were denied victory and given a 30-day penalty for not having gone all the way to Alaska before crossing the Pacific. Billed as the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indy 500 started in 1911 and is still held every year, typically on the last weekend in May. The venue is the perfectly oval Indianapolis Motor Speedway at Indianapolis, in the United States. This race, one of the most prestigious to date, sees some of the highest speeds achieved in circuit racing in the world, with cars virtually flying around at speeds in excess of 320 kilometers an hour. To this day, the Indy 500 is one of the most deadly races, with a total of 73 fatalities. The prestigious 24 Hours of Le Mans is the oldest and the most famous endurance race in the world that is still held every year. Originally held to test the efficiency and reliability of production cars at the Sarthe circuit in Le Mans in France, this race has, over the years, seen almost every famous marque participate. The Le Mans has also been a seat for bitter personal rivalries and professional competition, like no other race in this world. The 1960s were the most notable in this regard. With Henry Ford frustrated at his unsuccessful attempt to buy the Italian stallion, Ferrari, he vowed to defeat Ferrari on the racetrack, and made huge investments to develop superior race cars. The Mille Miglia was probably the last of the legendary road races. It was started in 1927 by Italian car lover Count Imo Maggi, who himself participated in the inaugural edition in his Isotta Fraschini. Starting and finishing at Brescia, the Mille Miglia covered 1,000 no-compromising miles of the Italian countryside. In spite of showcasing some of the finest Italian Gran Turismo brands, like the Maserati, the Isotta, the Fiat, the Ferrari and the Alfa Romeo, the race was cancelled in 1957 following a fatal crash that killed Ferrari driver, Spaniard Alfonso de Portigo, his navigator, Edmund Nelson, and 9 spectators, including 5 children. The most popular and the most prestigious event on the Formula One calendar every year, the Monaco Grand Prix, along with the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the Indy 500, is informally called the Triple Crown of Motorsport. The Circuit de Monaco, which hosts this Grand Prix since 1929, has also been called an exceptional location of glamour and prestige. Before 1929, Grand Prix circuits had been located in the countryside or on purpose-built racetracks. The first Monaco Grand Prix brought in a new dimension to the sport, because it was run round the streets of the capital, Monte Carlo, on a tight, twisting and narrow course. The Carrera Panemericana was yet another historic road race through the roads of Mexico, originally started to advertise and draw attention to the newly completed Mexican section of the Panamericana Highway. The first race ran nearly 3,300 kilometers along the entire length of the highway, panning Mexico from north to south. After 2 years, however, the race was touted as the most dangerous race ever, owing to the difficult course, the sharp bends and extreme changes in elevation. Porsche enjoyed a lot of success in these races, clinching many of the class-level wins, which was testament to the reliability of the VW Beetle. Finally, after a fateful crash in Le Mans in 1955, the Carrera Panemericana and all other such road races were cancelled.